because we have a special guest on today from Crucible, Meta Mike. Welcome, Meta Mike.
Hey there, guys. How's everyone doing?
Living the dream. Oh, I like your accent. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, I know. I'm an Aussie based in Los Angeles, so I'm all types of confused.
Awesome, love it. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in conjunction with Crucible?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, it's an interesting kind of path I took. I won't go too far into it, but I before really the metaverse boom of 2021 took off. I was in digital media and digital advertising for the better half of a decade, and I had reached a point where it was like, this is good and all, but it's not the future that I think I want to be part of building. I think there's so much more that can be done. Anyway, I during around the same time I picked up my first virtual reality headset, Meta Quest 2, and I kind of had my first experience with that in a social VR capacity, playing a game or virtual world platform called Rec Room, if you're familiar with it. And at that point, my mind kind of immediately expanded. I kind of saw what the possibilities of this technology was, specifically immersive virtual spaces, particularly social virtual spaces. And, the term metaverse was definitely around, but there wasn't all the talk of it at that point. So I started dabbling with various technologies associated with VR. I started learning Unity, a bit of Blender, because I really wanted to see what could be done in these virtual worlds. Like, I'm not necessarily a gamer. I play a lot of games, but they're mainly sports games, so I just don't classify myself as a typical gamer. But anyway, I still saw the benefit of these virtual experiences and wanted to, follow that further. So for the last 3 odd years, seems way less than that, but it's probably that. I've kind of been testing, experimenting, tinkering with virtual world technologies. I am very much a Web3 degen, kind of got into it around the same time as all the VR stuff and development side of things. So those worlds kind of merged, and the subject matter of the metaverse kind of became something that I gravitated towards very heavily and wanted to help build. So yeah, I've personally been focused recently more on the education content side of things, particularly focusing on digital avatar interoperability across virtual worlds. And Ryan, who heads up Crucible, and Open Meta and Emergence, we've been in touch really since I started dabbling in these technologies, and more recently I was brought on board to the team to kind of do what I do in helping people understand the different technologies as it relates to digital visual identity in virtual worlds. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. And obviously the announcement with the Futureverse partnership a couple of weeks back, that's kind of been awesome to see the response from the community, because really under the Futureverse portfolio of IPs, it's definitely some of the IP with the best 3D models in the Web3 space, I'd say, and really well packaged. to create accessibility for users to use those assets as tools in the virtual economy, in the creator economy. And I think it's a no-brainer type of partnership. So this is just the high level, and there's a lot of different pieces that we can dig into. But yeah, hopefully that provides a little bit of insight.
Awesome. Can you explain what Crucible is versus what Emergence is versus what Open Meta is?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I would say let's start at the top of the funnel. So Crucible is really an organization built around developing blueprints for the open metaverse. Now, what does that mean? When we are talking about the metaverse, or in this case, the open metaverse, which I would distinguish as something that focuses heavily on interoperability and standards across different virtual worlds, environments, applications, there needs to be some coherent standard of the way to do things in order to create that true interoperability. And interoperability could be avatars, it could be world objects, it could be just different, the way the data flows between different platforms. But, to this point, there haven't really been too many standards that have been widely adopted that allow for that transferability of different assets and information across those worlds. So Crucible was kind of set up as an organization to develop out these blueprints that can help create that level of layer of interoperability for game developers. Ryan likes to talk about the metaverse as the world, the internet built by game developers. I definitely agree with that. But I think the what constitutes a game developer is radically changing as well. I would say that people in Blender or Unreal or Unity that aren't developing games but are maybe doing animations or maybe using VTuber plugins, like I would almost associate that with game development in and of itself. But again, this all needs to be standardized for these assets to move fluidly without friction across these experiences. So then going into Open Meta, it is a DAO established by Crucible that is focusing on trying to develop out these standards across different categories like fashion, gaming, this, that, and the other. So it's more of a community that was established early on. Emergence is kind of a child of Open Meta, and Emergence is really the core underlying technology that allows us to execute these blueprints. So Emergence is a software development kit, SDK, that is integrated into both Unity and Unreal. You can go into either of those marketplaces today and download that SDK. But what it enables is an EVM compatible tech layer for developers that are wanting to participate in this open metaverse, in the open metaverse standards that we're all helping to build. So one of those things, and one of those components is visual digital identity, avatars, and that's really what a lot of the work that I've been doing recently has been focused on. So I'm not sure if anyone on the spaces saw the video that was released during the Futureverse Crucible partnership announcement, but that basically what was happening there is that our Emergence SDK requested me to connect my wallet. And then it read all of the items in my wallet to understand what assets I own. It then said, okay, well, these assets have an avatar associated with them. And I can select my avatar based on those assets. And then I can load that asset into the world, and I can be in this instance of a world in an Unreal game. I can be in it in a Unity application. I can operate in these experiences seamlessly through the utilization of the Emergence SDK. And so the SDK is really focused on developers, on targeting developers, because they would be the ones that implement it. So if you're a game developer or an app developer, you'd integrate the Emergence SDK so that you could automatically load in the avatars of your audiences, of what your audience holds in their wallet. So, again, with the Futureverse IP, there are so many different 3D models out there. The ones that I was playing with were goblins, were FLUF, were Party Bear, and I think that just the quality of assets makes it so much easier to kind of bring that vision of what we want this open metaverse to look like. So I know that was complex as well, but yeah, if there's any questions on anything in particular in that funnel, let me know.
Gotcha. And then the third one, what is open meta?
Yeah, so open meta is a DAO. So it is that second layer that focuses on bringing together like-minded people to help create these standards and these blueprints for the open metaverse. So that's something that I have had a little less involvement with. So I've been a lot more focused on Emergence itself and the interoperability piece. So I probably won't be able to speak to it all that much. But Crucible, Open Meta, and Emergence are all kind of one and the same as far as the family of technologies and the org goes. So definitely would love people to stop by the Discord and say hello. You can definitely find a lot of people utilizing the Emergence SDK in there and see what they post and this, that, and the other.
Right. So speaking of that, I see a lot of people have downloaded the Emergence SDK, and I was wondering if you can give us some examples of the types of things that people have done with it.
Yeah, for sure. So it's very extensible as to what can be done. I focus what I said before on the avatar piece. Primarily because I think it's the lowest hanging fruit for people to kind of recognize the benefit of it. So a couple of examples of that, and I guess I should note that because this is a recently developed piece of technology, the SDK is, and because games and applications take years to build, it's not where I can be like, oh yeah, go check this game, download it on Steam, and then you can go use it. Most of the projects that are utilizing Emergence are in the development phase, the early development phase in most cases, given the timeline there is in producing game content and applications. So I'll start with that. But there's a couple of examples on the avatar piece where there's a solution being developed by an incredible developer. Their name's Pending Reality. They are creating a VTuber application in Unreal Engine 5, and it is, I spend a lot of time researching the VTuber market. And if you aren't familiar what VTuber stands for, it's virtual YouTuber. So it's where you take on the visual digital identity of 3D avatar rather than a 2D video stream of yourself. But Pending Reality is creating an incredible VTuber application that is using AAA standard graphics for people to bring their NFTs in and operate as their NFTs as a VTuber. So that's one example. There's a lot of different examples that are using pieces outside of the avatar structure or the avatar component. So The Emergence SDK also allows for the reading of NFTs, minting of NFTs, transfer of NFTs. A lot of the standard contract functionality that you would see can be incorporated into it. So let's say, for example, there is I've seen multiple examples where developers are creating levels that have a reward mechanism where at the end of completion of a game or a challenge, you would collect X pieces or kill an enemy or something like that, and end with the option to mint a NFT. Now, that NFT is great in and of itself, but maybe that NFT has metadata that can tie back to other game components. So let's say, I complete this level on this game. I there's not a specific project I can point to in this. It's more just me absorbing what's been coming through the Discord. But let's say I complete this challenge. I then mint an NFT. That NFT has metadata associated with it, so that the game developer can then implement some type of validation where maybe only you can get a power up of speed based on whether you own that NFT in your wallet or not. So those assets then become value not only in game, but from a transferability perspective as well. They kind of take from the play to earn or rewards based mechanism that allows you to have transferability of assets. So that's another example. Another easy example that I think many of you would be familiar with would be token gating. So maybe if you have a fluff with a certain trait or group of traits, and that data is contained within the metadata of the NFT, then that can unlock something in an in-game or in-app experience where it wouldn't be accessible for others. And again, those tokens don't just have to be inherent in the persona metadata, but it can be items that you collect throughout an experience within the game or the app.
It's definitely, in theory, the things that NFTs can do and the way that you described what Emergence can help NFTs do really enable things in gaming to happen that aren't currently possible. But we are at the pretty early stages and we haven't seen, a lot of it get accepted or utilized.
Yeah.
What do you think the adoption curve looks like?
It's a tough one. I like to always think of it from two angles. I think there's one argument that can be made that it's going to be extremely difficult to penetrate the behaviors or change the behaviors of gamers who are fine with the mechanisms of the way the games are currently developed without any Web3 component. And I think that's fair. Like, I think even if there is value and in a lot of these new ways of thinking about developing out these experiences, if there's not that appetite, that's understandable. We're not trying to force people to change their ways. Gaming has been as successful as it has been for a reason. But I do think that on the experimentation side of things and the people building in Web3 are kind of building almost like a new genre or a new set of utility in what they are developing. And the adoption may be slow and may be primarily led by the growth of that audience rather than the transfer of people coming from Web 2 into Web 3. It may just be something that does take time, but it's I think, unfortunately, the stigma of I always forget the word for it, but the stigma of having assets with a value behind it, that obviously in an industry that has been consisted of a lot of fraud and a lot of fraudsters, it's hard to get past that stigma, and it's hard to convince people of the value. I've had a lot of conversations with, people that make incredible apps, products, games, and there is just this complete dismissal of the value that tokens and decentralized token ownership can bring to the table. And I really do think that it will be a slow process, but we need to get past some of that stigma. That stigma comes from experiences people have within the industry. The stigma will pass once the tooling becomes seamless and more people, more of the general population, not just gamers, are introduced into Web3 without them knowing it. And from there, we just need to be another part of that mechanism, where if you are developing out a game and you have your own character engine and you don't want, as a user, you don't want to set up a wallet, that's fine. But for those that do have a wallet, then maybe utilizing Emergence, then you can extract that value, whereas you would be able to without it. And I think the more situations that it becomes less about the value of the asset and more about the benefit of what it means to people, to the end user, I think that's going to be the key thing that speeds up adoption. So yeah, and I do think that even though there has been a lot of pushback from gamers, as it pertains to when Ubisoft did their launch a couple of years back, there was a lot of pushback there. But and more recently, EA is doing this partnership with Nike. Like the people building out these experiences understand the value. There may be initial pushback, but again, once people understand the value, and it becomes more adopted in the general population for the utilization of these technologies as a whole, I think that will speed up the process quite dramatically. And I also know that that's a pretty generic statement, but I think it rings true, because I have had, although I've had tough conversations with people that are adamant that it's not going to be the future, I've definitely spoken with people to show them the value, and once they experience seamless onboarding without even knowing that they're doing the whole Web3 thing, they're like, oh, I get it now. I see the value. Okay, I'm on board. So yeah, I have a lot of faith. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, with every new technology, you get a very wide range of people that are early adopters, that are latecomers, and yeah, of course, not every new technology changes the world, but and not every technology becomes a part of the future. But I think a lot of people believe that this technology will be. Anyway, I want to invite our audience members to join the stage, and I want to say hi to Bildo. Bildo, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me up, Max, and hosting these as always. And I appreciate
Thanks
Mike
for
for joining
joining.
us. I know I was super excited when I saw the announcement. I went down the rabbit hole, no pun intended, and watched your guys' last town hall, I think it is what you call it.
Yeah.
And kind of my understanding is it seems like just with pictures and JPEGs or music, videos. If I'm a video editor, I want a video sent to me in a certain standardized form. Same thing with music, same thing with pictures. Seems like you guys are really focusing on bringing that to kind of 3D assets for creators to kind of have a standardized platform to be able to create off of. Is that kind of the overall kind of second grader
Yeah,
breakdown
yeah.
of it?
I think that's well. First and foremost, thank you for watching that video because I hope it provided some value. But yes, so really, when it comes to 3D assets, specifically avatars, there are many different file formats that can be used. If you've ever looked to download your assets, I'm pretty sure you can export as an FBX or as a GLB. There may even be some other formats. If you would go over to Sketchfab, which is recently being relabeled as Fab, and download 3D assets from their marketplace, you can download Blender files, you can download OBJ, STL. Like there's so many different types, and that causes a lot of issues and much issues when it comes to being able to bring those assets to life seamlessly across different platforms like game engines, because sometimes, like, let's say for example, and I'm probably repeating myself from the presentation at the town hall, but if you have a FBX and a GLB, one may have a different skeleton structure than the other. FBXs may have different skeleton structures as other FBXs. The materials may be different. The shaders may be different. And that can cause a lot of headaches. And I found this out early if you are trying to deploy those assets across different virtual environments. So when it comes to avatars, we utilize the VRM file format. VRM, although I thought it stood for something a while back, it doesn't actually. It's not a acronym for anything, but it is a standard of avatar 3D file format built on top of the GLTF 2.0 standard. And you can think of GLTF as like the JPEG version of 3D models for the internet. So the VRM standard is different from other 3D models because it is standardized from a skeleton perspective, meaning that all the different bones that you rig up the avatar for, they all contain the same naming conventions, the same hierarchy in the structure. The materials that you can use, there's a couple of different options, but they too are standardized so that when you're bringing something into the world, it looks good, and there's not errors with your shaders and this, that, and the other. So the VRM standard, being born out of Japan a few years ago, has been heavily adopted in Asian markets. It's what you see being used in a lot of different applications within Asian markets, specifically around VTube culture. VRM is like one of the key file formats there. But it's interesting, in Web3, a lot of people have a lot of different IPs or platforms like OnCyber, Hyperfy, and Decentraland. They have also seen the value in having something standardized because they understand the issues that happen when they are not standardized. So we've got this kind of mix of the Web3 world, the Asian markets that are utilizing them, but when we're talking to more and more game developers, they don't really understand that it exists and that it's not that difficult to get your avatars in that VRM file format. And once they are in that file format and they're hosted somewhere, say for example IPFS, then we can easily read the NFT metadata of, say, any given NFT that has a VRM associated with it. Take that URL, load that model in real time, and drop it in a game engine for any deployed application or game. So it's just a way of ensuring that, and I've done like a lot of testing with like about 10 different VRMs today using Emergence, where I can just go in, scan my wallet, select my NFT, and I become that character in the world. So it's not necessarily us building a platform, it's us trying to increase adoption of a standard that is, in my opinion, one of the most interoperable and accessible standards for 3D avatars today.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I know when the announcement first came out from Futureverse, it seemed very, tech focused. So I think maybe it went a little under the radar for some of the community, but Futureverse has always kind of had the approach of partnering or putting in the under overall umbrella of Futureverse, partnering with companies that solve very specific pain points throughout the process. And it seems like they've partnered with you guys. Now, I would imagine that you could take it a step further, and like that type of technology would be pretty crucial for any type of like swappables as well, to where if I have my avatar but then I have a full closet full of clothing, that same type of SDK or VRM, I believe you said, would be able to enable those swappables as well, to where you could really customize your characters as well.
That is exactly the case. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because the VRM is a standard, but the true I guess connection point lies within the metadata of the NFT, because if the VRM doesn't exist in the metadata, then it can't really be accessed through scanning a wallet and looking at someone's contents of their wallet. So let's say, for example, in a couple of years down the track, a collection says, okay, well, you've had these base assets for wearables. We're going to take this a step further and create a remixable avatar based on our wearables marketplace, and each of those will also be NFTs. So then the VRM can have like a wearable extension slot for the metadata, where it's maybe wearable underscore head equals X some file, and then wearable underscore feet is another file. And then that metadata can be read in real time utilizing Emergence, and those 3D models can be appended to the places that they need to be on the avatar. It's definitely a lot more complex than that, but in theory, that is kind of the process where if you are wanting to extend it, then those extensions can definitely be brought in as long as they live in the metadata of the NFTs.
Absolutely, love it. Thank you so much for explaining that a little bit more. And again, I was super excited for it. I know it went a little under the radar, but I think you guys are a big piece of the puzzle, of the overall puzzle that Futureverse and the Root Network, everything that they're trying to build. And it seems like you guys are kind of leading the pack in what you're doing. So really excited to see what we can all do together in the future.
100%. And thank you for the great questions.
Ooh, I'll ask a question now. Having been in the NFT/metaverse space during the, we'll call it the bull market, where there was lots of new entrants and lots of interest in various metaverse concepts and NFTs, until now, where I think a lot of the attention, or the broader attention, has gone elsewhere. How do you view the drop in attention from at least some people? And do you think, how do you think that makes your job as someone that's working in this space easier, more difficult, or what do you see the future of the direction it's going, with there being less attention today than there was before?
Yeah, honestly, I think this is the best time that I have had experience with it, because you aren't distracted by speculation, and all the people that were speculating have now disappeared. Funny coincidence that, and the circle, or the communities, are now just really like-minded people like us having this conversation today, that truly are working toward building out the technology that will help facilitate of these experiences. So uh, it's kind of gone from this big raging party of a space to this small village of people trying to establish the infrastructure for the future. And I think that's such a uh, such a breath of fresh air, because you can understand who's who, who's doing what they're doing, why they're doing it, how each of the houses within these villages are connected, and the space is extremely small at this stage. But the more cooks that you have in the kitchen, the harder it is to get work done. And I think that this time now allows us to really figure out, okay, well, with the relationships that we're building, with the technologies that we're facilitating, and without the noise that we've previously had to distract us by people trying to build things and then disappearing, and then you having invested time in those things that have disappeared, you get to establish a new norm of who the future of builders are and what is being built. And I think that's something that has always drawn me to Crucible, because it's everyone here has had this mentality for such a long time. And I'll also mention a couple of other communities. M3, I'm a member of. They are a large metaverse building community. There's a couple of other virtual world platforms like Hyperfy, On Cyber, a couple folks from the Spatial and Decentraland community that have really, we all kind of know each other now. We know who to tap into for what. We know who has common goals, who has differing goals, and how we can align our goals to all solve each other's problem. I think it just becomes a lot more streamlined, so that when that next installment of interest comes through, and I do think it will be a lot less focused on 2D NFTs and a lot more on 3D, and there's multiple catalysts that could lead that to occur. We will all know who the real people that are trying to build a better space are, and be able to collaborate more efficiently.
I hope that the next time that NFTs get a lot of attention, it's more to do about what they can do for ordinary people than it being about like they can increase in price or decrease in price, which kind of makes people see NFTs as things like investment vehicles, when the real cool thing that NFT technology can do is so much more than that.
100%. I really do hope that's the case. I don't have all that much confidence in it being the case, but I still think that there will be, just based on timing, there will be so much advancement as it pertains to what NFTs can do, that I think people will start seeing more value in them. And I'm hoping by that time there are numerous AAA games or experiences that leverage the utility that comes with, tokens and metadata and all of that, so that when at first glance, when people see this technology, they're met with something more than just an image. They're met with all of that utility in numerous ways out the gate. Because I feel like last bull run is like, oh yeah, like this is an NFT, but look what we will be able to do with it. I think it needs to get to a point of, well, this is an NFT and this is what you can do with it now, and how extensible that is, to really get past people solely viewing them as speculative assets.
Yeah, and maybe even skip the this is an NFT thing and just show people what it can do. People don't even really need to know that it is an NFT. If you're playing a game and you can do things that weren't possible without NFT technology, and you don't really understand the details of what NFTs are, I don't think that's problematic. And if you don't want to control your own wallet either, I also don't think that's problematic. Just like the fact of the way that different types of things in gaming and technology and all types of experiences can work better and more things can be done with more flexibility makes NFT technology something that will penetrate at some point. Right now, the infrastructure isn't really quite there.
Definitely agree. And yeah, I think the more seamless we can make it, not the more hidden, but more the more frictionless a user experience without being bombarded by acronyms and even the culture around the space. I think that will be for the better.
Yeah, I'm not personally a big enjoyer of the NFT space culture myself, but I do see a lot of value in the technology. Bildo, did you have anything more you wanted to share? And also, I wanted to encourage any audience members to come up to the stage.
Yeah, I'll pull in honor of the greatest co-host that is no longer a co-host, Somnium. I'll ask Meta Mike what he's most excited about for partnership with the Futureverse, I guess, when he first learned about it. Is there anything that you're just like through the moon about or most excited about?
I mean, honestly, I just love watching builders build, and so having the exposure that you guys are bringing to the space with hosting spaces like this, giving awareness to what's actually happening behind the scenes with these technologies. I am in so many discords that are filled with people developing games, developing experiences in virtual worlds. I just love seeing people progress through learning journeys of utilizing 3D assets, of trying to learn how to code different game functionalities, working with Unreal for the first time, opening Blender and doing a donut tutorial. Just the more that I see that, and I definitely saw it in the last bull run too, I just get a lot of excitement, because it's validation that people actually truly care about visual digital identity, and establishing their own presence in these spaces, and doing it enough and being passionate about it enough to put in hard hours, weeks, months of educating themselves as to how to utilize these technologies to their best advantage. So I'm just honestly keen to get closer to the community and see what people are doing on the 3D side of things. As an obvious extension to that, I would love to see people experimenting with what can be done with Emergence, not only in building out games, but like building out applications. I think that really Unreal and Unity get pigeonholed as game engines, but they're equally app development engines, but just 3D applications. Like the VTuber example I was giving earlier, that is not what I would call a game, but it's one of the best applications that I've ever used. If you go on my if you go on my Twitter profile, and I don't know how to pin things right now, so but if you go on there, and my pinned tweet is utilizing that VTuber application and doing it in UE5, and that is utilizing a BRM avatar, like the demo that we provided, and how we're building out the avatar technology for Emergence. So I would just like people to think about new ways that they can utilize game engines to bring experiences to life, rather than just defaulting to, this needs to be a game because it's in a game engine. I'd love to see examples of XR, of like VR try-on in MetaQuest headsets that allow you to use Emergence to swap out different Futureverse avatars. I'd love to see people think about how you can use write functions, read functions, this, that, and the other to create more nuanced virtual world experiences. How you can kind of dive deep into the layers of metadata of NFTs to unlock the potential of experiences by utilizing the uniqueness of traits, because I think that's something that's still, not even scratched the surface of how you can utilize the metadata to build out different experiences that aren't just token gating. Another thing with Emergence that we have is dynamic metadata, where metadata can be appended to an NFT within a game experience or an application experience, and that metadata can change in real time within that experience. So let's say, for example, I have a home space and I have a 3D model of a sculpture that I've collected. That sculpture may have a GLB file metadata slot, a metadata parameter. It may have an image parameter. It may have this, that, and the other, but we can append on top of that an XYZ coordinate, or some form of additional variable that can be adjusted in game based on game mechanics. That's obviously diving a little deeper than the base use case, but it's that type of innovation that really gets me excited. I am a big tinkerer. I like to mash different technologies together and see what a resulting output could look like, and I just want to see more people doing that, because I think that experimentation gets us, gets people interested. Just a very quick side note on that, you would see that if you pay any attention to what's happening in the generative AI space at the moment, there's been a big theme around people utilizing spirals and checkerboard patterns to create generative AI images. And that was all spurred from one post that someone made on Reddit. And now it is everywhere. And there's full applications that people making a ton of money off of. Not that that's what's important, but like, people see something that's innovative that people haven't thought of before, that was an easy blend of two different technologies, and they're like, oh, there's so many things that we can do with that. Let's go out and do it. That's the same type of thing that I think can be done in the NFT and virtual world space. So, yeah, thanks for the rant.
Yeah, just had a quick question, kind of going like on what you had just talked about. So, like, for instance, there are a couple different projects that have either been directly connected to the ecosystem or partners with different parts of the ecosystem. So, I don't know if you're familiar with the game Walker World, and
Yeah.
they had
Yep.
partnered with drug receipts or DRX, and DRX did a specific onesie that is now in the Walker World collection. So are you kind of saying that they could then implement like that onesie you could take off and maybe put on your FLUF because you have the digital onesie of that like actual wearable, but then if it is used within the Walker World game, it might have a specific power encoded on top of that?
Yes, yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of a blend of both. I think, let's say, for example, the dynamic metadata piece is more focused on things that are currently happening within a world environment. Theoretically, what you are describing could be done just with the base layer of metadata, where if it's brought to a particular experience, then that game developer could be like, oh, okay, has this trait or has this jersey or has whatever in the metadata associated with it. Let us therefore enable X thing, and power up or flying ability or something like that. With the dynamic metadata, it's more something that happens within inside the experience itself.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thanks for kind of clarifying, but also, letting us know that that type of stuff is possible. Really excited to see what all comes of it. And again, thank you for your time to talk to us and get a better idea of what all you guys are bringing to the partnership and how we can all benefit together. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys have another town hall coming up soon. Is that something that you can plug
Yeah.
or let us know when we can tune in to learn more?
Yes. We have that coming up next week. Yes. So not next week. On what day is it today? It is
Tuesday,
Tuesday the
it
26th.
is
I thought it was the
Thursday
28th.
at 9 a.m. PST or 12 noon EST. So yeah, would love to see some people come along there. It will be an exciting one. If you know some of the names that are tagged there, you can probably see that there may be some interesting things talked about on that one.
Yeah, I saw the tweet announcing it, so I just wanted to bring it to light to the rest of the community for anybody that's interested to tune in. I've been really excited with what you guys do, so happy to continue to learn more.
Appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
I'll pull up that post and pin it in a second. In the meantime, anyone that wants to come up to ask a question, now would be a good time because we're almost an hour in, so we'll probably end relatively soon. But my question to you, MetaMike, was what do you anticipate to be the next step or the next handful of steps for the partnership between Crucible and the Futureverse, if you had to guess?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the obviously the integration with the root network is what's going to make this special. It's going to allow for the interoperability of everything that is occurring there from a data perspective, an assets perspective, as well as, I guess, the basic communication of data through the network. That's going to be the focus. On top of that, obviously, avatars and ensuring that those are integrated into experiences. At this point in time, obviously, you will see that the primary models are FBX and GLB, I believe. So, getting that to a point where those assets can be integrated into the experiences through Emergence. I also think I'm really interested in what's going to occur on the future path side of things, and how we can tie some of that data through to experiences in game. I am not transparently as close to the specific internal roadmap of what is coming next down the pike, but I do see that avatars, digital identity, having data tied into these game engine experiences based on everything that already exists across the root network will be that first step. And from there, really the sky's the limit in terms of what can be built out, but just doing things iteratively and starting at that base layer, I think will be key.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to the process. I know it's not one that will happen, like lightning, but something that will happen over the course of months and years, and I look forward to the whole process of it. Now that we're almost at the hour mark, is there anything that you wanted to share or that we didn't cover that you wanted to?
No, not necessarily. I think we had a great overview, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me about this. I would just recommend, if you haven't already, and you are listening in, and you own you have an NFT that has 3D files associated with it, all I'd say is take a look at what those 3D files are. See if you can, even open them up and have a look around. I think it's there's kind of this barrier, I think, for a lot of people, where even if they are in possession of these assets, they'll immediately classify themselves as, I'm not a game developer, or I'm not a 3D person. I'm just kind of along for the ride. I want to be part of the technology. But the barrier to entry isn't too high to start getting into that point. I always say, I'm not a developer. Like, there's no way I'm a developer. I don't code. But the thing is, I do code in pieces. I use visual editors to create applications. I, brute force ChatGPT into doing things and building out code for myself. And I think there is, as the barriers to entry for these different technologies or domains of utilizing these assets get lower, it's just going to be natural and easy enough to get into it without needing to feel like you're doing anything too advanced. And the thing is that these assets are fun to play with. Like, you can make amazing animations with free technology right now. You can make games utilizing templates with free technology right now. You just need to watch a YouTube tutorial, and it's not that hard, and you'll be amazed by what you can do with little resources. So all I'd say is that, and no one has a free hour, but when you have a free hour, see if you can download the assets, see if you can open them up in Blender, and just have a look around. See if you like the experience of viewing things in 3D. And if you're ever wanting to learn more past that point, or don't know where to get started, just honestly feel free to DM me, and I'll help you get up and running. I do a lot of educational content that I put out to the world because I see the value in doing the experimentation. Like, I've got HackMD, which is a platform that allows you to do markdown blog posts, and I've got probably like 15-20 different tutorials there about 3D assets and interoperability across virtual worlds and doing this, that, and the other for them. So I'm more than happy to help people get up and running if they just don't know where to start. So that is all I will say to close this out, and feel free to DM me at any stage if you ever are curious about doing more with the assets that you now have as owners of this incredible IP.
Awesome. So I'll wrap it up. I want to give a big shout out and thank you to MetaMike for joining us today to explain about Crucible and Emergence. I learned a lot, and I hope our audience did as well. I want to thank everyone I also want to thank Bildo for coming onto the stage and helping out. And I want to thank everyone that listens and that listens to the replay. The replay will be available as soon as the space ends, and we'll be back at our usual time next week for another show. So thanks so much, and some emojis in the chat, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and maybe consider watching one of my other videos. Bunnies up!